This week, journalist and Australian expat living in Texas, a news director at KYFN 1043, Katie Dixon, drew the ire of the LinkedIn world when she innocently but unwittingly opened Pandora's box when commenting on the Roe v. Wade debate, giving another perspective to the issue, which was adoption. Now, what should have been seen as a fair and reasonable to raise drew an avalanche of vitriol and abuse towards Katie. And what it also highlighted is that most people seem to have failed to understand that the US Supreme Court and the intent of its ruling, simply put, that under the US Constitution, it has no right to ban abortion, but rather that choice should be left to the individual states to make. While joining us to talk about life on the ground in the US and the anger sweeping across the Americas because of how many have misinterpreted the Supreme Court's ruling is Katie Dixon, who gladly will also be joining The Informer weekly as our correspondent in the US. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, from afar, the decision seems to have stirred up a hornet's nest. How is it over there?
Oh yeah, when it first came out, especially on social media, it just blew up with opinions from both sides. Those that were against the ruling, those that were for it and happy about it. The debate is still going on, and like you said, I think people have missed what that ruling from the Supreme Court was, in which, originally the Constitution said that the states determined that, and then the Roe versus Wade in 1973 came in, and that's when it was banned. So essentially, that is giving it back to each individual state. People know what, for the most part, what each state is going to do already, which is probably getting a little bit ahead of themselves. We don't know the finer details because each state can make their own laws regarding it. But it certainly blew up, and it's still blowing up. Up in other states, they're doing protests and things like that. A lot of celebrities are coming out and voicing their opinions too. So I don't think it'll die down anytime soon as states start to implement the laws, according to what they're going to do.
Yeah, we're actually seeing protests or support marches here as well in Australia. So it's a worldwide perspective, and so it should be. It affects 50% of the population. Now, as it goes back to the states, while on the surface it seems like it could be bad, but in those states they still have the ability to vote out a conservative led government and stop this going ahead, don't they?
Yes, they can, and that's what a lot of people are saying now. The state now will make these laws, and that's where we have to go to our representatives, our district representatives, and talk to them, who will then take it to a higher up. It's safe to say that Texas has not been quiet, that they plan on banning abortion. They have tried in the past, but that ruling protected it. But it's no secret that Texas is going to ban it. Likewise, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, which are all adjoining states to Texas, they'll all ban it as well. So there are some states like that will have to travel further. They can't just, hop across the state line. And that is one of the big things that women are upset about, the women that are marching and the women that are upset about this, is that it's taking away their right, they feel, if they do want to have an abortion. And a lot of people are expressing how they feel that there'll be more illegal abortions, which end in serious, complications, even women dying from illegal abortions. Some women talking about back before they even, banned it. Before they brought in Roe versus Wade, they talked about, illegal abortions back then and what happened. So a lot of women just feel like their rights have been taken away from them. But on the other side, there's a lot of debate going on, one of them being adoption and healthcare and lots of different things that I feel we need to be talking about as well. But certainly it's not going to die down anytime soon.
Now, this will disproportionately affect the marginalised population in America without access or ability to travel interstate. We see now some of the corporations saying that they will fund any travel and healthcare costs needed with it. But that doesn't help those without a job, those living on the margins. Is this just going to see a bigger increase in their disadvantage and struggles?
Yeah, and look, one of the questions I've raised, even just at our office there is we're seeing these corporations come out and say if one of their employees would like to get an abortion and they have to travel out of state, they will cover those costs. You know, we're yet to see any companies come forward and say if a woman chooses to keep her baby, we will help with prenatal care or we will help with maternity leave. America is one of the only countries that doesn't offer maternity leave. Private corporations can offer it, and I believe there's 5 states that it's a government funded maternity leave, but otherwise there's nothing for women over here. To have a baby, to self-pay, you're looking at about $12,000. That's not even C-section that goes over 20,000. It would be nice to see on the other side corporations coming forward too and saying not everybody necessarily wants to have an abortion, but a high percentage of those that do, according to statistics, it's because they feel they can't afford it or they're not ready. And all these companies are coming forward saying we'll help you. And personally, I think that it would be nice to see some companies come forward too and say, if you want to keep this baby, we'll offer you maternity leave or some kind of help as well.
It seems extra punitive, especially somebody that sits in Australia here with universal health care, whereas if a woman does choose to have that baby, she's supported, she's paid parenting allowance, she's paid, the hospital is free, maternity leave, there's a government mandated maternity leave. And yet in America, we see a shortage of baby formula. And given that mums are given no right to maternity leave to actually breastfeed that child, you can see how it becomes a really dire situation, especially when you're living hand to mouth, week to week, day by day, trying to cover costs. Could this actually be a catalyst for some positive change going forward for those mums who do want to have the baby but aren't supported?
I think that we definitely need to look at these topics. We need to discuss these things that are associated with the topic of abortion. Like you said, right now, as states will start to ban it, if that's what they want to do, I feel it's going to flip things around. So right now, if you choose to have an abortion, you're looking at between $700-800. It is the cheaper option. And as women that are against this are saying, they will now have to travel. It's going to cost more. Abortions will only be for the wealthy because they can travel to them. This is what a lot of the protesters are saying and things like that. So it's almost flipping it from where abortion was the cheaper option to now abortion being expensive. So there's a lot of things that go into it. I think that mothers need that support. Not everyone will qualify for what Australia probably knows as Obamacare. A lot of people make too much money, but not enough to cover private healthcare because private healthcare is so expensive. I myself, I make too much to get any government healthcare assistance, and I can't afford, a few thousand for private healthcare a month, or even 1,000. I mean, the wages are different over here compared to Australia. But, it was certainly about 14,000 when I had my daughter. I had no, and that was just a cost we had to take. So I think a lot of women are concerned about that and they don't have any help. Afterwards, there are some programs, WIC and things like that will help. And communities do have things like diaper drives and stuff like that, but it's tough. And it would be nice to see some help like I've experienced back home in Australia. I used to joke that I would wait till I came home once a year and I'd go to my doctor and get my yearly checkup because I didn't have to pay for it, but over here you've got to pay for everything. I mean, I don't even have a doctor as like back home we have our family doctors and things like that. So it's very different.
Yeah. Now there's also talk that this may open the door for other conservative drives to reverse the gay marriage, rights to contraception. Are we catastrophizing it? Will this happen now? Is it something that is on the cards, do you think, Katie?
I haven't heard a whole lot about that on the ground over here as such. When it comes to the community, lesbian, gay, adopting, that was one of the things that came up, in that topic when I brought that up on LinkedIn. Some people are getting turned down for adoption. They're applying, they've got the money ready to spend it, and they're getting turned down for reasons of maybe the husband works on the road or whatnot. But then they're saying that, same-sex couples are getting accepted and things like that. I think that if, the conservative side tries to bring that in, I think it'll be at a later date. I think we're going to be battling this one for a while. We're going to start to see each state implement what they're going to do, and they're going to go from there and kind of feel it out, I think.
Also, too, a couple of the Supreme Court justices appointed by Trump specifically went in saying that no, Roe v. Wade was settled, it was precedent, and it wasn't up for discussion, and it wasn't on their agenda. How does the Supreme Court now, their authority, how do they sit with the American public?
I guess it depends what side of the fence you're on. I mean, really, if you sit back and you take a look at it, I don't feel that anyone, I take that back. Of course, you could be upset that they gave that decision back to each state as opposed to, allowing it as a whole. But I think that they've done, what they felt they needed to do, because originally it was the state's decision. And I think that this issue has become perhaps so complex. There's so many aspects to it over the time, and each state is different. California has very different laws to what Texas has and things like that. So I think rightfully, they probably took a lot of pressure off themselves handing it back to the states, honestly. And this was leaked several weeks ago before this ruling ever came down. It was leaked, and we kind of saw all the documents and what they were talking about. So I guess we kind of all had a bit of a heads up. I think many just didn't think it would actually go through.
Well, Katie, it's definitely a catalyst for change, whether it sees the Democratic side of politics actually galvanized and vote en masse to try and stop this going forward, or whether the Conservatives want to hold the ground. It's a very emotive and very important decision, regardless, right down to the personal level. So, Katie Dixon, our regular now US correspondent, thanks so much for your time.
No, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me.